We're on. Okay, great. Good evening. Welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen's meeting of September 12, 2013. We'll start as we usually do with the Town Administrator, David Williams, reading us the proposed agenda.
Thank you. First, we'll start with public comment, and then it's estimated time of 6:15, consideration of borrowing with Chapter 90, Town Treasurer and Town Clerk. These are CM&D projects. 6:25, proclamation recognition of Neil McPherson for his time served at the fire department. 6:30 p.m. program update. Management plan for Conservation Lane, and Kelly McClintock will be in. 6:50 p.m. consideration of tax rate setting, the annual tax classification presentation with the Board of Assessors and our town assessor. And a 7:20 grant update of MassWorks. It's the one we talked about a week ago or so when you authorized me to sign the grant so they could submit it. Well,
Yep.
Gina will be in to talk to you about that.
Excellent.
7:40, consideration of grant acceptance for stewardship grant. 7:50, administrative reports from town administrator. And I'll talk about annual town meeting and capital item update and upcoming meeting topics. And at 8 p.m., consideration of consent agenda of selectmen minutes and warrant approval, and setting the next meeting, and then breaking into executive session to discuss collective bargaining and pending litigation, and you will not return to open session.
Great. So we probably need to amend the agenda just briefly on the executive session part for pending litigation, just
Yes.
adding that as a bullet point. Okay. Does anybody else have any amendments to the agenda, gentlemen? You're good, Paul? Mike, you're good? Well, then I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended with the pending litigation in the executive session, which will, great, second. All those in favor? Terrific. Off we go to the races. Yes,
I
sir.
have something downstairs I need to go get.
Okay.
So just carry on.
All right.
I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, we'll keep your seat warm as best we can, Paul. And that puts us into public comment, if anybody has any public comment. Yes.
I didn't come here for this purpose.
You want to grab the mics if it's a learning experience, and
That way they can hear you at home.
they can really
too.
hear you at home. And it's important to hear your voice, Ben, Vice Chair of Advisory and esteemed resident of Sherborn.
Well, now you're actually ruining my idea here, which is
Oops.
I'm Ben Williams, Wildwood Drive. In agendas past, you had the perambulation of the town boundaries, and so I was wondering what was the status of that? Are you guys going to perambulate the town boundaries, or?
That's walking the borders of the town.
Thank you, Mr. Webster.
And my second question is, shouldn't that be circumambulation rather than perambulation? But
Well, you got me on that one.
Ask David
Yeah,
that one, too.
David, yeah.
When are we going to do that?
Yeah, when are we going to do it, and should we what'd you say?
Circumambulation.
Yeah. I don't know.
well, to make this semi-serious, it had occurred to me that, you know, if you actually did something like that, you could involve some other aspects of the town, like the historical society, to, you know, talk about the history of such a thing, and maybe get some of your nature and conservation types to, you know, point out some of the flora and fauna along the way. But
Not a bad idea. I've heard it takes many weeks of, 1 and 2 hour hikes to do that, but that sounds like a
Well,
great idea.
so you could just pick a few highlights,
Sure.
maybe.
There you
All right.
go. Pick your spots. Something to consider, and
Well, I think we are supposed to do that by statute, but I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure whether
have
that's
we
observed or not.
practically,
Every 10 years.
Yeah, I'd like to keep you
10
guys out of
years?
jail.
Well, to make sure Holliston doesn't try to, sneak in and grab some of our
a
land.
little tough to do in some of those grown-in places, but I guess it can be done. We'll do our best. All right, we'll look into that. Okay, any other public comment while we're at it? Hearing none, I think we have a consideration of borrowing with the treasurer, I understand, coming as well, so I'll hold 5 minutes on that. In the meantime, maybe we can approve a couple of other things. For example, we have a warrant this evening in the amount of $49,959.89. It's warrant 11. It's been reviewed by the town administrator. I've looked at it. So I take a motion to approve this
I
warrant.
have some questions on that, Peter.
Okay,
There's a question I asked and David didn't know the answer. I know one of the items in there is overtime for one of the police officers for the football game. Now, the football game's in Dover, and the football game's sponsored by the school committee, and I'm wondering why the town of Sherborn is picking up the cost of that under those circumstances.
I don't
There's
know.
a long history here.
History can be changed. I mean, if that's a policy we have for some reason, it should be for a good reason. I don't know what that is,
There's good reason for it.
which is,
If Dover charged us for every time the Dover police serviced the schools, their involvement is considerably more than the Sherborn Police Department. And the net effect would be a fairly sizable jump in the cost of running the schools.
so they do not break this up evenly or charge the schools for it?
Most of the police activity at the region is done by Dover.
And they absorb that cost, or they charge it back to the schools?
Well, I don't know, I'm not familiar with of that being charged back to the schools in the years I've looked at their budgets, but I can't say I know, so that's something to explore. What we're talking about here is payment for services rendered, so you're talking about a
I don't-
policy, yeah.
I'm talking about who picks up the tab. I'm not talking about not paying this bill. I'm talking
Understood.
about the policy.
Right.
If it's a good policy, it works out better for us, that's great. I just don't know about their policy.
Well,
Ben?
sorry to interrupt, but how much of the activity at the regional school facility is, because it's in their jurisdiction rather than overtime? It's a very good point if they're having to, pay overtime for things, and somebody on that side of the river is absorbing it, then it sounds like we've got a good deal.
Well, would it be worthwhile, Mike, to get David to look into what the practice is, so that we can
As long as he
evaluate
looks
a
into it
policy?
quietly and doesn't tip
Quietly?
them off in case it's working out in our favor.
Well, it sounds like it's working out in our favor, but I think
Well, I
a
think
little
everybody
history
assumes
would
that,
be,
but we
that's
should
right, we
maybe
should know
know.
that, yes. So with that, that's a
Yeah,
great
that's good.
question, that's a good thing to understand, so we can,
Maybe the chief has an input on this, or?
I was just gonna chime in. You're saying, was it overtime or was it a detail?
It was
you
8
can look in
hours.
there.
It was 8 hours, so it could be 2 officers, I guess.
What was it charged as a detail or overtime? Because it's a significant difference.
That's right.
Check.
the detail would be reimbursed
Well,
by, paid for.
I'm just making sure there wasn't a clerical error on our side over to.
Okay,
Yeah.
So I'll follow up with Lieutenant Bento.
so we'll follow up.
There you go, 8 hours.
And it's actually Sherburne Fire and Rescue on
I'm
that
sorry,
one,
it's
so.
fire rather than,
So that was standby on a
Wrong chief,
bonfire or
sorry.
something? Maybe it was
Wrong, chief?
chief. It looks like it was fire and rescue, not,
So 8
his
hours.
other favorite chief, though.
So that would be an 8-hour.
Jim, why don't you do that?
and here's 8.5 at the soccer game. So just,
Yeah.
if we're providing the EMT service.
We are
if it's-
providing EMT services, is
Yeah,
what it
if-
is.
That's a paid detail from,
So the school committee budget reimburses for that? Okay.
correct.
Or the recreation department if it's
Yeah,
a
I'm not
soccer
sure
field
who
thing.
the
Okay,
Okay,
check writer is, but yes.
Great.
We're covered on that.
gotcha.
good.
Fire sends out a
Excellent.
bill.
All right,
That answers
What do you
that.
bill them for them?
so any other, so,
No, I was fine with the rest of it.
so we move and
Motion to
second?
approve?
Move to
Motion
approve.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Great. Terrific. That puts us to our 6:15, which is a borrowing.
Thank you.
There he is.
There it
Wanna-
is. Pete,
Pete,
come on in.
Perfect,
Wow, that was great timing.
perfect. We set the stage for you, Pete. So what I read here, Pete, is we're just doing a borrowing for the Chapter 90 projects that we've recently approved, which were Farm Road to Goulding, resurfacing, Coolidge, Elliott Farm Mill, Washington Engineering, and North Main Street Construction, in the amount of $295,608. And
So can I move?
Yeah, please do. Yep.
I move to approve the sale of $295,608 state anticipation loan with interest at the rate of 0.65% to Unibank for savings at par as negotiated by the treasurer.
I second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? So we sign here where it says sign here. Sorry for the sound there. I'm gonna need a better pen.
Want to borrow this pen, Peter?
I got it quickly.
Yours is blue already. The finishing blue.
So I have to sign here, sign here. A lot of places to sign, huh? I think I got them all. 4 places to sign, and we've been witnessed by our town clerk. It's a beautiful thing. That all we have to do on that? Great.
Oh, we have been witnessed by a town clerk. That was-
Yep. And I think I am who I am today.
Well, just a question to clarify for our listeners. When it says 0.65%, because there's the percent on it, that's actually less than 1%. So if you took the percent off, it would be 0.065 or something like that.
For an APR.
So it's not 6%, it's not 65%. It's,
That's up, that's up 0.01% from last fall, we did, so interest rates are starting to rise.
Do you envision future borrowings in the near term for,
I think we're gonna be able to slide by without a revenue anticipation, in other words, we sometimes have to borrow.
so then you'll bundle a bunch together, because we've got a whole bunch
We
of.
sometimes have to borrow, while waiting for the tax money to come in,
Yeah,
because we're paying bills starting July 1st.
yeah.
And we don't, the money doesn't start to come in until sometime in October, late September. But the projections look like we will squeeze by this year, okay?
And there's plenty of capacity in the credit markets these days compared to when we were sweating bullets there a few years back. Great. All right. Well, I think that takes care of that. Town clerk gets that. All right, Pete, anything else while you got the microphone?
Give the money, that's good.
Now, is the understanding this work's going to start this fall? Is that what the plan is?
Yeah,
as soon as possible.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's, yeah, we're not waiting for the funds to come in.
Excellent.
Great.
I was just saying, we're not waiting for the funds to come in from the state. That's why it's a revenue anticipation note, because it's going to do work now. Yeah.
Okay. We got a couple more minutes to let the crowd fill in here. How about, we have some minutes to approve, just taking things out of order a little bit, but using the time. I think we have the minutes of, what do we have, July 25th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Great. How's that, Diane? I'm the laggard on some of the drafts of minutes you have. Is that correct? You're so kind not to say that, but it's true, isn't it? Okay.
How about the town administrator's report?
Yeah. Do you want to just give us a few minutes of that, David, while we've got the time?
I'm writing it.
You're writing it.
Actually, we can talk about, we distributed the annual town meeting update and the capital update.
Yep.
And I think the biggest news is the Pine Hill Access Road is finally lined up. Okay. Finally lined up a surveyor who can put down the road in the original plan. So once he marks that out, then they can start cutting.
So we
the
had
trees
trouble
down.
finding a good document
Right.
to find a start point to measure from.
Right, and then to find a surveyor who was willing to do that.
To work with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Okay,
so that is settled now.
great.
And then the update, upcoming meeting topics for September 19th.
Well, can you just run down the list, just so we can do that, if that's all right? So you've got the command vehicle for the fire department, you've got that on order. So that's coming in the next month or so, I take it, right? Next month, perhaps?
The command vehicle, yeah, that should be in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Computer server for the fire department, that's a bid process that's taking place?
Yes. No, actually, is that ordered? The computer server for the fire department?
We're just holding up right this second,
Okay.
while we're finishing up with the company, the vendor company.
Okay.
So that.
So
we
you
get
know
the
what you
right-
want, you know
Right.
what you're about to order, you got the price, it's just a
Right,
sign the piece of paper, the PO,
it should be, yes.
in essence.
The engineering firm was assigned or awarded for the HVAC system.
Okay,
The solar sign the solar crosswalk downtown, they just put in the foundation, I think, yesterday to be,
so that should be up by the end of the month is what we're
Yeah.
anticipating, right?
yeah, it's finding a person, an electrician willing to hook that up.
Okay,
The CM&D truck
it's
is.
February, right? So that's not something we needed for plowing, I take it?
No,
No.
no, but the director's vehicle was purchased through auction,
Yeah,
so that was an update.
yeah,
And that saved $4,000 or $5,000. Right now on the transfer station, we've got the overlay on hold, we've got container purchase and the fencing on hold to figure out, we don't want to put the fencing up if we're going to do a better base and have to disturb the fence. So I'm trying to get a hard answer on that, whether we can actually do the fence now or not. Carol was going to proceed with the containers, and I'm not sure the board actually voted on last time on how we were going to proceed.
I think we're happy to do the potholes for the time being.
Right.
Right? And move towards town meeting next spring with the well-done project, the
Right.
proper,
I thought we approved the
Oh, wait.
fencing and
and the
the
containers.
containers.
Yeah, but I think David's just wanted to find out on the fencing, given that we're going for the full smash project on
Right.
the
But you approved
Maybe.
the,
fencing, yeah,
doing the full fencing?
yeah.
Okay,
That's my recollection.
Think so.
Yeah,
Yes, and the containers.
yes,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
right, okay. Our public safety equipment for the cell tower thing is on hold. Access road you described. Pine Hill's doing their own capital equipment and hopefully also the related maintenance that they were suggested to do. We'll see. Hope, important.
The Woodland Street, Mill Street intersection and Golding Street West intersections, we do have a signed contract for an engineer now. And that has, that kept falling through the cracks for quite a while.
Yep. The regional school, they've got their air conditioning in and operating. I've been going there every week this past summer. I'm going there tomorrow morning again.
So that's it for the capital items.
Question on one of the items here, David, on the Pine Hill School access road, it looks like we only got one bidder. Is that unusual? It seems a little unusual that we only get one bidder.
No, actually, what we did is because that project was not bid out originally, it was like the town was going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the services were going to be provided by the town and some from an outside contractor. We put all the services out for bid for a year-long contract that we could use for other contracts. So that's what we put out to bid, was like a dozer with an operator for an hour, you know, and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be able to, any other contract that comes up for the coming year, we've already put the labor and the hourly rate out to bid, and we'll use them off that. But if the contract exceeds $5,000 or $10,000, then we will have to have a separate contract that actually goes through the signature process,
Mhm.
and it will have the dollar amount of the contract. But if they're using those services, those have already been put out to bid.
So you put those out to bid, and this was the respondent at those rates? Is that what it
There
is?
was only one respondent that responded to every rate,
Got it,
yeah. But any contractor could have bid on any piece of that,
sure.
yeah.
This accept easement for Whitney Farms, which was Article 12 of the annual town meeting, to Can you refresh my recollection what that,
We'll have to ask Gino
Easement
about
from-
that.
That's an access from the parking area. There's a couple of parking spaces that are gonna be built along the road to the rail trail.
so this is from Rising Tide?
This is an access easement that Rising Tide is giving the town so that people can use that rail trail. It was a condition of their approval to do that.
And changes are being made in the property description to avoid an encroachment.
I haven't talked to Gino about that, but he'll be in later. We can ask him
Okay.
about it.
All right.
Okay, we're good with that? Then I think we'll move to one of the highlights of the evening. We have several,
This may be the biggest highlight.
but this one is, well, how do we call it on the agenda specifically? It's a proclamation, recognition of Neil McPherson.
I didn't know he was
Fire department.
100 years old. I think that's
Former,
amazing.
That's right, he gets the Boston cane, I think.
formerly my favorite fire chief of Sherborn, no longer. But I will say that, having sat here, and even before that, having gotten to know Neil and the way he operates, and particularly in some of the more difficult challenges of weather and whatnot the town has faced, it's been quite rewarding for me to know you and know the kind of person you've been and the service you've provided the town. So I can't say enough good things about you. But we do have this proclamation that we can read you. Paul's read proclamations for us very well, and I'd love, if you're interested, Paul, I'd love to have you read it again, because he's very good with words.
Oh. But before I do, I want to thank Neil. You put in years and benefited this community in so many different ways. You've not just been the fire chief, but you've been a advisor to the board. You've shared wisdom, thoughts on many different things. The community is better off today because of you. So from the heart, I want to thank you on behalf of myself, the board, and the entire community for what you've done. The proclamation, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Town of Sherborn, a proclamation. Whereas Neil McPherson has served the town of Sherborn since January 11, 1990. Were you 5 years old then? Whereas Neil has selflessly demonstrated his care and compassion to the good citizens of the town of Sherborn, serving as fire chief and emergency management director, providing for the safety and well-being of our residents. Whereas Neil has served on many committees during his tenure with the town, most recently as the chairman of the Fire Chief Search Committee, which changed the history of the town by hiring our first full-time fire chief. Therefore, we, the selectmen of the town of Sherborn, on behalf of its citizens, extend our warmest gratitude to Neil McPherson for his dedication and service to the town of Sherborn, in witness whereof we have caused the seal of the town to be affixed on the proclamation this 5th day of September in the year 2013, and it's signed Peter Caruso, Paul Durensis, and Michael Giamo. So why don't you come forward and receive it?
Thank you so much.
So I'd just like to say a couple quick things. Number one, thank you for all the support that I received over the years. Also want to thank all the members of the fire department. Obviously this isn't about me, but it was about the entire group coming together despite some difficult times. And certainly want to thank John Dowes, heavy pour bed in the rain, and certainly want to welcome Tim. I think he's been doing a fantastic job. Personal opinion, but I want to thank you again for the recognition. I appreciate the opportunity to serve with Tim. Really good. So thank you again.
Thank you, Neil, that's great. Thanks to your lovely wife back there who's helped, who's allowed you to be serving us as well as you have. And it's just terrific.
Peter, if I could just say one thing too, people may not completely realize this, but Neil's been doing what's now a full-time job in addition to his full-time job, which is a real personal sacrifice. And I'm sure, and I know there were many late nights, middle of the nights, calls interrupting his workday, and we really appreciate that, too.
Yeah, for sure. Great. All right. Thanks very much. All right, so I guess we'll now forget about you, Neil. You're past history, and we're moving on, okay? No, so Kelly, I think you're up, and you're going to sit up here with us up at the table? And great. You got Bridget with you? Excellent. And so we're going to learn about management plan for the conservation land and other topics, perhaps.
You got the report in advance.
Appreciate
and
that, yep.
We don't want to just repeat what's there, but I did want to share with you some, we'll call takeaway points, 5 basic takeaway points that we think are the most important.
Great.
Thank you, Kelly.
And then answer questions and discuss in more detail whatever aspects of this you would like to. I guess for the record, I'm Kelly McClintock, 65 Woodland Street. Peter, by the way, I want to express appreciation for the due diligence you did the past day or two with your questions.
Well, I
of Bridget.
appreciate, I appreciate the package. I love reviewing things and getting smarter about stuff that I don't know about normally, and I
Well,
appreciate.
they were good questions.
I had
mean,
questions, and Bridget responded so quickly, so I'm appreciative of that as well.
In your let me quote for the commission something you said, which impressed me. Our lands are a big investment by our taxpayers, represent valuable assets of the town. And in light of all of that, it is good to see we are working to be smart on how best to preserve, protect, and improve those assets. And one of the first and one of the most important takeaways is these really are important. There's some 1,600 acres between conservation lands and town forest, not including all the other publicly accessible spaces. And there has never been a comprehensive management plan for any of these properties, at least for the town-owned ones. That's due partly by lack of time. The Conservation Commission spends almost all of its time, 90% I would guess, on wetlands regulatory requirements that have to be done, and partly because our budget of $2,000 has been able to do the bare minimum of mowing, but really not much more than that. But we're committed to doing what basically you say should be done. And that brings us to the second takeaway, which is this land management task force. I have a lot of friends on conservation commissions and other land management agencies in different towns around the state, and when I describe this task force, they're all jealous as hell. As opposed to their experience of rivalries and difficulty of communication, thanks to Bridget and George Fisk, who, 2009 or some, not too long ago. Let's all get together and deal with these collectively. And I would say, in terms of leveraging Bridget's time and getting things done on the properties, it's been a tremendous help. Third, we do want to do this comprehensively. And there was this forest stewardship plan done a year ago, which was specifically a forestry question. How do we manage the trees? Which ones do we cut? It's a professional question, but it's very narrow. There are other kinds of questions. Okay, there's been encroachment on the fields. Let's cut it back and restore them. We don't need a planner to tell us about that. It's a matter of coming up with the money and hiring someone to do it, which we're in the process of doing. But there are a lot of other resource management questions down there, quite complex ones. We tried to deal with this as a land management task force, and after many months, we were floundering. Bridget probably could do this if she could spend a couple of months doing nothing else but this, but you can't. So we decided we'd approach the Conway School, which was by far the cheapest of several other competitors. Conway worked for the town during its open space plan process 10 years ago, 15 years ago,
Yes,
something like that.
2007, they did the open space plan.
So there's a history here. Because they use student labor, it's a lot cheaper than others. But we would get a professional and comprehensive plan at Barber, which is the largest and most complex property. With that, we think we could build on that and by ourselves do Hopestill and the other reservations ourselves. Incidentally, I apologize, the numbering is a little bit screwy on this. Also, just want to observe that in being comprehensive, it's not just comprehensive resource management. We also are looking at mapping, at signage, at outreach to the town. What do you want for these properties? Because we want some guiding principles, which doubles as education. Look, folks, we've got some wonderful properties here. Take an interest, go use them. And finally, when we have this plan, and even ongoing, making this happen isn't going to be short-term and cheap. We have $2,000 a year in a maintenance budget. We have this conservation trust fund that we've had some communications with you. There's no way we could implement any reasonable management plan with those funds. But we believe that Sherborn is very appropriately set up for a public-private partnership. The Sherborn Forest and Trail Association has already chipped in substantial dollars and has committed to chipping in substantially more, matching what the Conservation Commission can do. There will be state grants. We have some potential for foundation grants for the Conway part of this anyway, and suspect that the dollar for dollar matching that the Forest and Trail Association has been doing is just the beginning, and that we probably could do much more substantial private support if we put our mind to the fundraising, which we absolutely will. So please, this is just a very big overview. There must be particular aspects of this you're more curious about than others, and how can we help you?
Well, no, I appreciate it. I'll start off. I had a couple of questions when I read, a few questions, I guess, and Bridget answered most of them, but just to help the conversation, you're talking about doing this plan with the school, the Conway School, approximately $6,500, which you'd take out of the trust fund that you have, the Conservation Trust Fund, basically.
I'd be very surprised if we had to.
If you had to, okay. So you may find other sources, right? I mean, clearly you're creative about the fact, or how shall I put it? One of the concerns that I mentioned is the history of Sherborn doing engineering studies and then not doing anything with them. But so engineers are getting enriched and we get information and it's stuck in a drawer somewhere. It doesn't sound what you're describing that that's likely to happen here whatsoever, and that to the extent that they're out of the plan comes, here's the plan, it requires X dollars to accomplish the plan and Y dollars each year thereafter to maintain the plan. What you're talking about isn't necessarily going to become a burden of the taxpayers or necessarily all going to be something that the taxpayer, some portion may, but we'll face that reality when we have to, knowing what it is that the experts suggest.
Faster with a bigger town budget.
Right.
We think over time we can do what needs to be done with what we've got, plus substantial fundraising and participation. There's a lot of enthusiasm in town for these reservations. There has been
Right.
a significant amount of, every year the Forest and Trail Association puts out a green flyer that all of you have seen. It's gone to every household, and there is a little box there, further contribution for trail maintenance. Last year was the first time that little box was put out and $1,000 came in with no priming of the pump at all.
Right. Right.
So we think the potential is really there.
Right. One of the other things was just, and you touched on it briefly, we had the expert in for the forestry plan for a test site way back in the Barber, I guess. And that's on hold, as I've come to understand with some further understanding from Bridget, in part or largely because NSTAR says you can't cross your land because we have an easement. And so that's something that I think we need to all get smarter about, and understand how is it they can do that? My reaction was, wait a minute, these people have an easement, but they're telling us we can't cross our land, and it's crossing with equipment and whatnot. So that's just something to get smart about. And you've looked a little bit into it, I take it, Bridget.
So there was a recent development today. Basically, the forester contacted the Conservation Commission office today, and he and I discussed that the conditions that NSTAR is requiring are not ridiculous, and they're feasible for a logger to come in. And the insurance that they're requiring is a $500 million general liability, and that's something that these loggers generally
They
hold.
typically have, yeah.
So he's thinking that all NSTAR needs to do is send us this lease agreement that they'd like us to sign along with the logger. So the town, NSTAR, and the logger would sign this license agreement after reviewed by, I mean, I think it should be reviewed by town council before the town
Yeah.
signs anything like that. But that's something feasible that could start moving by the end of this year, assuming the Conservation Commission votes to push that forward, because there has not been a formal vote for the commission to actually
Understood.
push the logging forward.
Yep, understood. Okay, that's
But the
good to know.
commission shares your skepticism about NSTAR's right to do this.
Right.
If the conditions were onerous or they were charging a big fee or something like that, we would seriously consider thumbing our nose at them and just
Right.
doing it. But there's no point in getting into that.
Yeah, no, and I'm not going there myself. There were two other things, if I could just briefly. One was a reference to the need for good GIS mapping. And so all I say is, we keep talking about GIS in a variety of different parts of the town's operations, and I'm gonna try and see if we can get smart about what capabilities we have, what capabilities we want, just to make sure we're not reinventing the wheel and or otherwise.
That's something that the task force team is working on. We have a volunteer that has the time to go through and use the data that I have from my GIS system to create better trail maps.
Yep.
And that's something that would also be utilized by Conway School. And this volunteer and myself could work on uploading those maps into any GIS programs that the town had for the public.
Yep, okay. And the last point I'll make, that this talked about one of the expected products of this program would be under the field restoration, that there would be an improvement of wildlife habitat. That's why I asked the question about how that links to the Wildlife Management Committee's effort. Somehow there's some
Right, and that got me
cross-pollination
thinking.
there, so that's all.
The wildlife habitat improvement was generally for specific species, like something like a bobolink. If you
Yes.
open up fields and had consecutive 100 acres of open fields, that would promote bobolink
Yeah.
nesting and other field nesting birds. So that was our generalized goal, but your comment got me thinking that the Conway schools should comment on the deer population
Yeah.
at Barber, which I have been working with the U.S. Forester to set up plots to monitor certain species of plants to see the degradation from deer grazing.
I see. Yeah.
So, but that's something that Conway School could comment on, and we do have one beaver dam on conservation land that's flooded out, part of the Bay Circuit Trail and a lot of Barber Reservation. So that's something that Conway School may be able to weigh in as well.
Great, thanks, I learned a lot, that's terrific. Gents, any questions? Please feel free.
Shall I go?
Sure.
Had a couple of things. Part of the mission of the Conservation Commission is to conserve and provide conservation. There's always a tension between species habitat and public access, because many times if you are going to have birds nesting in a field and people are bringing their dogs, for example, in there, and the dogs will go to where the birds are nesting and eat eggs and do things like that. And so how do you find the balance? And I was trying to see in the report here, what balance do you strike? And it looks like you're emphasizing public access here between parking improvements, widening roads and trails and things like that over habitat protection. Are there habitats that should be protected?
Me? So, I think
She
that,
takes the hard questions.
I think that we're going to be looking for Conway to comment on the trail system as well, so that would come into play with the wildlife habitat. So I'm hoping that Conway School will do a wildlife, survey, determine what species are there, what species are known to be in the region, and if promoting them in a certain aspect of Barber Reservation is a possibility. I believe that the commission would be the final say, and, you know, if we blocked off a trail, I doubt that would happen, but, I think there will be a balance of trails that could possibly be closed because they're overgrown and would be great species for a particular wildlife species, or if, we don't even have that habitat and we would add a trail. So I think that there can be a balance. I mean, it's almost 200 acres of land. I think that there will be enough areas for wildlife and the public to access accordingly.
What's the commission's policy generally about horseback riding and dogs on leash and off leash?
They could,
We don't have one as far as I know.
they can be on the land. They can utilize it, yeah.
So all of these 1,600 acres are open to horseback riding and to people bringing their pets?
Well, I don't want to speak for town forest because that's up to them. But for Conservation Commission, the only time we could close a trail, if there were wet conditions, but as to my knowledge, we've never done that.
There are regulations, adopted regulations applicable both town forest and conservation land. I believe the only prohibitions they talk about are motorized vehicles.
Right.
I think the philosophy has been, since way before my time, that horseback riding and dogs are be encouraged. They want to
Right.
go out in the trails, that's great, but the potential conflict is very real.
Yes, no, I'm all in favor of them being open to horses. I just want to be sure that if there's a habitat, because you mentioned birds nesting in fields, if there's going to be a large number of family pets brought to that field, there will be a problem with that design of a habitat for that species.
Well, that's something we would
We
look
have to
at
address that.
and review.
The other question I had is the reference in the fifth point, or the fifth field, not in your takeaway points, but in your underlying report. You say, other projects, depending upon available funds, continued improvements of Upper Charles Rail Trail.
Right.
We had some funds, which I think we accessed, but I think there still are some state funds floating around for that Upper Charles Trail.
Is it from the grant? I don't think so. We used it all.
We used it all?
Yeah. Gino and I used the last to develop a plan that would need to be approved by the Conservation Commission in order to install the trail, because it's within a vernal pool.
Okay, I thought there was like $6,000.
That's what it was.
So it's gone. All right, so much for that. The parking area at Leland. For more space?
I think I know there is difference of opinion in the town as to whether that's a nice layout or not. The major problems I have heard are sort of exactly where the parking is and those big stones, which are visually intrusive, and isn't there some way of redesigning the parking in that small field just to make it more attractive? This is on other projects, it's not high on the list, but it's something that enough people have talked about that we wanted at least to put it in.
And the next one down, it says, provide new access and parking for Hidden Meadows from Western Avenue. It made me think, do all our major properties have access and parking?
Definitely
No.
not. The only real designated off-road parking, I believe, is Barber and Leland.
Yep.
And there is some side of the road parking elsewhere. Because Hidden Meadow was one of the areas we thought might make a good forestry project, the forester suggested that the landing area, which would be near the road, for thinning purposes, would be ideal for a future parking lot if we wanted to convert it. There are no current plans for implementing any timbering in Hidden Meadow, and there is considerable controversy about that, too.
Well, apparently we're running out of time, but my point was to urge you to have accessible land where you've got trails and you've got beautiful land and there's no conflict with habitat. Let's make it easy for our residents to enjoy it by providing some parking, some access. It would encourage that at every major piece of land. And I see you have it on the list here for Hidden Meadows. That's why I asked you, are there other like that we need parking on and we need access on?
We do. There, for instance, the Rocky Narrows parking lot at the entrance to Forest is used as parking for the town forest that goes up there. But there are a lot of other properties where designing a parking area would be difficult. We haven't looked comprehensively at it.
Or just making the suggestion that this would
Yes.
benefit everybody. So anybody wants to use land, they can actually go there and safely put their car there and enjoy what you've said is a beautiful asset of the community that was part of your introduction, which I hope stimulates people to go out and enjoy these assets. But in order to enjoy these assets, unless you live right there, you have to have an access point with a place to safely put your car.
Thank you, Paul. Yes.
Point.
I was wondering if you've connected with the high school and other, youth-oriented organizations in terms of helping with some of these projects, maybe as a service project or as a senior project. I know at one point there were Eagle Scout projects that improved trails and things like that, but it occurs to me that the school might be a good source of, interested, at least some interested volunteers and also manpower for some of these projects, free manpower even.
Didn't Alex suggest that at one?
I'm
meeting?
sure. I mean, I've used interns before, but not specifically for this
Yeah, I
type
think
of
if,
stuff.
there may be a club over there or some class that would be interested in what you're doing and species habitat and some of the experimental work you're doing. I mean, that might be something that somebody was interested in.
The Boy Scouts have done quite a lot. They've been very helpful on the Eagle Scout projects, as you say. We haven't really explored using them for invasive species management or other purposes, but it's something that should be looked at.
And I mean, the invasive species, also the educational component of that, because all of us have those invasive species in our yards as well. It's not, you know, and maybe a lot of them come from our yards to the wild lands also. And so I know the Conservation Commission makes some of that information available, but that would be something that would be important for people to understand also what they can do to help preserve these. The other question I had was, I did see John Higley one day and George about a year ago walking through part of my backyard, and I asked them what they were doing, and they were looking for trail connections. And I'm wondering, is that part of this project? Are you looking to connect the various trails? Because that seems to me to be a very good idea if it's possible to do it, and having a integrated network gets at some of what Paul was talking about in terms of making things accessible.
It's making linkages around town is a very exciting interest, and George Fisk and John, I think, are the two trailblazers, and put it that way. They're most in tune with the possibilities and have made things happen. It's a long-term goal. It doesn't happen fast. It's not a part of this project immediately, but the Land Management Task Force, again, long-term, is very interested in expanding those linkages.
Okay.
That's great, thank you. This is
We
very
have
interesting.
Terrific. Well, thanks very much. We have a public hearing that has to start at a particular time, so I really appreciate you. I appreciate, Kelly, your flexibility, because I know we bumped you 3 or 4 times here on these agendas, so it's great to finally, you're worth the wait.
Peter, it's
You were worth the wait.
good to be able to
Thanks.
share this with you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Sounds exciting. And you don't need action from us on anything at this stage of the game. Great.
Thank you for your hard work. That's a lot went into this.
All right. Great. All right, so we're up with the, our favorite assessors. Hi, Yvonne. Do I want to read it? Okay, I should read it. All right, we have a legal notice, Town of Sherborn, public hearing, attention taxpayers. The Sherborn Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 12, 2013, at 6:50 PM in the Selectmen's Meeting Room of Town Hall, 19 Washington Street, Sherborn. The central issue to be discussed during this tax classification hearing is whether all 5 classes of property, residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal, shall be taxed at the same rate or at different rates. Interested taxpayers are urged to attend the hearing. Written and oral statements from interested parties will be accepted and taken into consideration at the hearing. Written statements will also be accepted prior to the hearings. Sherborn Board of Assessors, this was in the Dover Sherborn tab 9513. Great.
Okay, so, what I usually do is briefly summarize the report that I've given you in advance, and then I'll take any questions. If you want to ask me questions or comments, or am I talking loud enough?
No, we've all read the report. I think we're all
Are you all good?
on top of it, so you don't need to
Don't need to
spend
say
a lot of
anything?
time on it.
I can
but-
leave?
but
Well, you
can-
have a half hour, so,
So go ahead and talk.
25 minutes.
Okay, all right, so basically, the purpose of the public hearing is for the Board of Selectmen to determine whether they're gonna split the rate or not. My purpose in being here is to show fiscal effects of what would happen if you chose to split the rate. And those are basically done in the examples in the back. I do provide a summary of what has occurred to the values and the budget in this year. So I'll briefly go over that. And then I'll go over the examples, and then I'll take questions. Okay, so fiscal year 14, things that affected values. Fiscal year 14 is an interim year adjustment. We do a total recertification with the Department of Revenue every 3 years. Our next recertification is next year, fiscal 15. So 14 is an interim year. We do, however, make adjustments during those interim years. New growth is found on page 4. The new growth for this year was $154,593. And you can see how that's comprised. 79% came from residential and 21% came from commercial. I give you a breakdown of how new growth has been the last several years. Changes in taxable status. We had 3 property owners move into the chapter classification 61B. and that becomes effective for fiscal year 14. And we had one very small piece of land off of Everett Street that was taken through a tax title foreclosure. Overall, the residential open space is about a little over 95%, and the commercial industrial personal portion is almost 5%. I give you a breakdown on page 6 so you can see how that compares to the years past. Okay. We're all very familiar with what happened at the May 2013 annual town meeting, but I just basically summarized that. I give you a breakdown on the levy limit. There was no override, so the levy limit becomes the fiscal year 13 levy limit. We add 2.5%, which is allowed by Prop 2.5. Then we add in our new growth, which I just talked about, and then you add in your debt exclusion. That becomes your tax levy. The difference between the tax levy and the permitted levy is what you're spending and what you could have spent. I always say if it's under 11,000, then that's a rounding function. And this year, the excess levy capacity is 9,352.5. So that's pretty close to the mark.
We're spending what we're allowed to spend, basically.
That's right, with no room. So on page 6 is the breakdown of what.
Just back, so the tax increase is 3.5%, which is the 2.5 plus basically 1% for the new growth, is how people would understand that in its simplest terms, right?
Yes, in simplest terms, it is the 2.5%. It's about 0.7% on the new growth, and then you have to subtract out the excess levy capacity of 0.04, and that comes up with 3.51.
Gotcha.
So, okay, so moving on to page 6, I just give you the how the residential percentage comparatively to the commercial industrial personal percentage has been over the last several years. And you can see that it's all about the same, 96, 95, 4%, 5%. It's very close. There's not a lot of fluctuation because there's obviously not a lot of growth in the community, commercial-wise or personal.
And the commercial includes the 61 properties, is that correct?
That is correct. The commercial property includes the 61A properties. The 61A properties make up about 4.23% of that commercial number.
Of that commercial number? Okay,
Yes.
that's good to know. Thanks.
Yep.
That's actually key to know what I was asking for where we're getting to. Great.
Okay. On page 7, I talk about a single tax rate. If you vote a residential factor of 1, that means you are maintaining a single tax rate. However, you are allowed to split the tax rate if you so choose. I give analysis. The first thing I do is I give you an analysis of what the surrounding cities and towns are doing. This has not changed over the years. The only community that touches Sherborn, which is Framingham, splits the rate. I'm sorry, that's the only community that splits the rate. And you can see their residential percentage is 59.6. They are the lowest on that list. But I do always make a point of pointing out Natick. Natick has 76.7% residential, and they choose not to split the rate. They keep a single tax rate, probably to keep those big commercial businesses coming into Natick and not Framingham. I don't know why they do it, but that's just a guess. Historically, we've always had a single tax rate, and then I go into the tax rate scenarios. I give you the overall scenario, which is basically what portion of the tax levy the commercial, industrial, personal properties are going to contribute. And then if you split it with a 10% shift, you can see the difference, 25, and a 50% shift. It's basically 10% of the 1,076,761, 25%, 50%. So if you did a 50% shift, it would be 1,600,000 and change versus 1,076,000. So a little more than 500,000.
And all that's doing is shifting from one group to the other.
That's right. There are no additional taxes that are ever raised. It is merely a shift. So basically, and that's really captured in the individual scenario that
Yeah.
I come up with on the next page. Basically, what happens with the individual scenario, I give a $700,000 home and compare it to a $700,000 commercial property. Obviously, with the single tax rate, they're both going to be paying the same at $14,238. If you chose to shift it 10%, the residents would save $77. However, the commercial property would be having to pay an additional $14.21. Basically, for every 5 cents of savings for the residents, it's going to be a $1 increase on the commercial. And so then I go through the scenario for the 25% shift and the 50% shift. So the 50% shift, which is the greatest you could shift, is a $364 savings for that 700,000 residential. And the commercial would have to pay $7,119 more, which is significant.
And so would not, just what you gave me before, so 96% of the commercial would be basically the downtown businesses.
The commercial, industrial, personal is made up of the downtown businesses,
Yeah.
and it's made up of, like the Algonquin gas lines. It's
Okay.
made up of the N-Star lines.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
there are,
that's a
and
big
there are
chunk of
other
it.
properties that are considered industrial, that
Yeah.
that
Odessa's
N-Star.
industrial.
Odessa, yes, is included in that. There is an N-Star facility over there near Odessa that's included in that, as well as a few other properties that they own. So that's
Gotcha.
included in that.
Gotcha.
Besides the downtown businesses and the personal property is, a lot of it is N-Star and Algonquin, but it's also the downtown businesses, the
And
people
so if you
within
did a
those.
split of 50% at the max, it would hit the personal property, hit the industrial, and it would hit the commercial.
It's all of them, all three of
All
them.
three of those,
Yeah,
gotcha.
you
All
can't,
right.
you can't separate that, it hits the
Just
three
trying
of
to
them.
understand, yep.
Okay, and so,
And our tax rate in this, you can't change that, it's $20.34,
right. Unless you want to split it, okay.
unless you want to split it, great.
Do you have any questions, comments?
So you've gotten my questions. Gents, do you have any questions? Because then we'll just open it up to the public hearing crowd here.
Just a comment, I went first last time, why
Okay.
don't you go first
All
this
right,
time?
sure. No, just the way I was looking at this, it does look, this is a comment also, it does look like we are seeing a $750,000 increase in our levy roughly, and some portion of that is new growth, and some portion of that is the allowed increase, but some portion of that is also debt service as well, right? It looks like our debt service
Our debt,
portion has
yes.
increased since last year.
Our debt service last year was 1,803,904, so it's increased by 53,156.
Okay, so it's not,
Yes,
it's something, but it's not a huge
Right.
chunk, okay. And I guess one way we could bring the tax rate down is to borrow less, or to pay things off, more slowly.
Somehow, if we had the
Yeah.
dough to do that.
Or more slowly, yeah.
Right, spreading it out, yeah.
yes, I mean, the only way you're gonna change it is if, to change your tax rate is if the valuations change, or if you have more revenue to offset the tax levy, or if you don't have that part of the budget that you've gotta spend, the debt or whatever, you decrease the budgets.
Right. You good?
Go ahead, yeah, Paul.
Okay. I've sat through a lot of tax classification hearings, both in Sherborn and my other communities. So my first comment is to commend you and to praise you as having one of the best presentations. It's very comprehensive. It is well ahead of many communities in the presentations I've seen elsewhere. So to the assessors and to you, well done. This answers a lot of questions. The thing, as I've explained in prior years, the thing that I've looked at, what I've learned from other communities, is that if increase in property values is different for residential and commercial, such that the commercial were getting a tax break and paying less taxes this year than last year, then you want to shift something to them so at least they break even or a little more. But here, their taxes are going up like, like everybody's taxes are going up. So it's not like someone's getting a free ride. So that answers the first big question. The other point that I want to make is that our tax rate is high, but part of having a high tax rate that will change as property values rise. So if, for example, the average price of a house in Sherborn is $700,000, but next year the average price of a house is $1 million, and the assessments change, then the computation that's necessary to get to the tax rate will produce a drop in the tax rate, not in the overall revenue for the town, but just the formula that's used. So the numerical value of the tax rate, while it is high, it reflects the fact that we've gone through a pretty nasty recession. And there's been drops in values, in property values, across the nation. Sherborn has weathered that better than other communities. Our values have dropped less than in other communities. But as the economy rebounds, this high, what looks like a high tax rate, should level off, and the rate of increase in that tax rate will level off. Am I correct on what I'm saying?
Yes, as values rise, the tax rate will drop. If the values were to raise higher than the budget, so if the budget goes up 3% and the values go up 4%, then the tax rate would drop. That's correct. So we have had stable values for the last couple of years. We haven't gotten hit as hard as other communities. We did see a slight decline. We have seen some stabilization. But as you can see from that chart, they're pretty much where they were last year. And that's why you see an increase in the tax rate. You don't see an increase as much as you did last year because the budget went up more and the values actually dropped. So this has been a better year. And then this current year that we are in is I've seen more sales and increasing values. So it's a better year. For next year, it might be a better year. But there's going to be some, and that's a good point that Paul brings up about the tax rate. If all the values went up 30%, you all are still going to be paying the same tax bill.
The rate just goes
because
down.
the rate goes down. The tax bill's going to be the same.
But there has been, just to follow on, there has been some concern that I don't have because I understand the value equation that Paul's describing. But there is a limit of $25. We cannot tax above a rate of $25, as I understand it. And so if you ever hit that ceiling,
It's
you can't go
$25.
higher.
You can go higher, slightly higher than $25 because of the debt.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, and it's
Yeah.
all described within the parameters of Prop 2.5. Just for an example, if the values did nothing, and the budget stayed the same at the 3.5%, you'd hit the 25 in 6 years.
6 years, okay.
That's if
Is
the
that
value,
applied to commercial property too?
if all the values stayed the same, and you just increased your budget every year by 3.5%, it would hit it in 6 years.
But does the 25% cap apply to commercial or just to residential, or?
That $25 cap only applies to residential if you split because there are towns with, like Framingham has.
That's what I was looking at, yeah.
Right, yeah, it doesn't. That's only the residential part, that $25. So if you split the rate.
So we put the burden on the
Just put the burden
commercial
on
at
the
that
commercial.
time. So no
In
problem.
6 years, you can think about splitting, no.
We may have to split the tax rate.
There you go. That's when you really have to go there.
I mean, it would really
There
be,
you go.
yeah. I mean, if there's, and hopefully within 6 years, we have some more growth, we have some more revenue, we have other things to offset the tax levy than what's there. So, and of course that, I can't forecast that.
Right.
So, but,
Well, again, I brought it up because I was trying to answer the concern.
Yes.
Gee, are we a plane taking off where the runway ends a little too soon? But, no, because all of that, there's a lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of moving parts.
But I
Right.
think people care about their tax bills, and we have very high taxes, whether you're looking at it as a mill rate or you're looking at it as a
Bill,
bill.
Bill.
It's a big bill. And
Yes,
people are concerned about that. That's the takeaway is, for me at least, is we've got to figure out a way to level things off.
right, and we've had no operating overrides now for 7 years, maybe?
right, since, I believe fiscal 7. So all of these that
Since
I've
I got
given
on
you.
advisory.
Take all the credit. That's good. But
No, it's a hard effort by all parties involved to continue not to have those overrides. And it hasn't been easy for the community.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I-
no. Hasn't been easy.
But Mike raises a good point, that we're constantly working to get other sources of revenue. We're constantly working, we are notoriously reluctant spenders when it comes to spending money. We have tried to make do with alternate ways of raising money. We just heard from the Conservation Commission, for example, how they were able to get matching funds with $1,000 for contributions. We see how the library is very successfully raising millions of dollars. This community has struggled to find ways to try and keep our taxes down. Obviously, there's more that we can do. But things have been fairly stable. The rate of growth has been fairly steady over the last few years, and there has been no operating overrides.
That's great. So I'll open it up to the public here if anybody has any questions or comments that they'd care to share. Apparently not. I guess everybody's pleased with the clarity of the presentation by Yvonne.
I thought it was a great presentation.
It was. It's
Very
terrific.
clear.
But I see Nancy Hess, our tax collector, the person who wants to get that $20.32 out of you for,
That's right, and I'd like a minute if it's possible after you close
34.
the hearing.
okay. Great. So you have nothing to say in terms of where we go with what action we now have to take? And the action we have to take is decide on whether to have a level, how would you describe it? Single tax rate, right?
Yes, you should vote a residential factor of 1, a single tax rate.
I move that we adopt the recommendation of the Board of Assessors and establish a single tax rate of 1.
Do I hear a second on that?
Second, I'll second.
Any discussion further on that? All those in favor then? Great. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Just want to raise
Chairman, you
an
sign it.
Yeah, I got it.
open meeting law issue.
I sign right here? Yes, I do. Yes, sir.
An open meeting law issue. There was a request for a minute of time to talk about something that was not part of this hearing. That's not on the agenda.
But we don't know what it's about, so I don't know if we know that it's not about this hearing or not.
She said it wasn't going to be part of the hearing. So it's not part of
Well,
this
she said it wasn't
agenda.
gonna influence our vote, but it's applicable to the discussion. I don't have a problem allowing it unless you're making an editorial comment, Nancy, and then we'll influence. But if you're making more of an announcement is what you'd like to do?
Some information for the tax.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that, unless you think there's a serious open meeting law issue, Paul.
It's just not on the agenda, but if we don't take any action, then it's like a public comment. It's like reopening public comment.
Second. Reopen public comment. Let Nancy talk.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. I move we open public comment for Nancy's comment, and you've seconded it. All those in favor? Great. Okay, Nancy. But we
Yes,
haven't-
we closed.
Okay.
Oh, well, we voted.
I guess we voted, so that's the end of the hearing if there's nothing further from our assessors. We closed the public hearing. We've moved on to public comment, unless town administrator wants to guide me on
No,
these
you're good.
waters that I'm not used to swimming in.
No, you're good, you're closed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to the assessors for all your hard work, and to Yvonne. It's good to see you. Great. Yes, Nancy.
As you know, you had to postpone the planned meeting for this hearing to this week. And this is just one step in the whole tax rate setting process. So after this, the DOR has to approve the rate, and then Yvonne sends all of the stuff to my vendor, and they produce the conversion for it to become tax bills. Then we print and we send. So we're a little behind, and I'm getting phone calls from taxpayers about the tax bills. So I just wanted to say that we now subscribe to taxbillsonline.com, and as soon as our information is available to us from our vendor, that will be put online so that people can have access to their tax bills before they get mailed to them. So that if people are anxious about what that tax bill, I would say in 2 weeks, they should keep checking tax bills online, look under Sherborn, and plug in their name or their map and lot or whatever, and they can print a tax bill off online. We're hoping that this will help when we go to the not having to send them a bill at all, which the state has finally approved that we can do e-billing. And there may be a time when people just as soon get it online as to have it mailed to them, and it will save us money and also really be quicker for them than having to go through. It takes us almost a week to get bills sorted, stuffed, and mailed, and they can have their
So
information.
they can get it online and pay it simultaneously or at the same time?
Well, not through the same thing, but
not through the same
no,
thing.
they would still go through our Unibank online payment system.
But they would have the information as well?
They have all the information they need right on that bill, and they could take care of it. And I'll do my plug again. Earlier, you were talking about borrowing money. It really saves them as taxpayers in the town money.
For cash flow purposes for the town.
For cash flow
yes.
purposes, if they
Yeah.
do pay it. I know people who escrow it with the bank don't control that, but there are a lot of people who don't. And we have had good response on that. That's been very helpful to us in the past.
All that being said, aren't we one of the first communities to establish a tax rate?
We usually are. I don't know where we'll fall this year, but usually
Early in the
our-
game, for sure.
our genie there from the Board of Assessors is really good at working with the Department
What
of
do you
Revenue.
do all day? No, I'm just kidding.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Are the tax bills going to go out on October 1, payable November 1?
Absolutely, if we have to have this Board of Selectmen come in and help us stuff, we would.
Okay, so you said that you were behind, but you're going to get the bills out on
We
on time.
usually try to get the bills out in the middle of September, so people have 6 weeks, so that we hit the first half of people who pay at the same time every month. We like to catch them at the end of September rather than the end of October. So we try to get the bills out in the middle of September. We will definitely have them out if we have to work night and day before October 1st, because otherwise we can't make them due until after November 1st. So, but I would like to start the cash flow as soon as possible, so if people want to go online and get their tax bill, I am hoping, if with no glitches, that the DOR will approve the tax rate and we'll be able to get the conversion within a week, week and a half.
Great.
Okay,
All right, thank you, Nancy.
thank you for the time.
Appreciate it. We'll close our public comment and go back to our agenda item, which next up is our favorite town planner.
Turn to
Gino
our
Carmona.
previously scheduled program.
Yes.
Gino's here to get us money. This is good.
Yeah.
Maybe, hopefully.
He's-
Thanks.
Is that what we have or something different?
I think it's slightly modified, but
It's
the same basic
updated.
thing,
It's
updated.
refined and updated from what you got in your packets.
Yep.
The state has a program called MassWorks Infrastructure. The applications are due once a year in September. And the primary focus for the grants this year is to support development of housing, which is usually not something that we would qualify highly on. However, there is a separate category for towns under 7,000 that don't have to follow that provision. And the program for towns with under 7,000 population are for road safety programs. So I put together this application to build the sidewalk on the east side of North Main Street.
And the map's very helpful, thank you, yeah.
Great. On the premise that the sidewalk will, A, eliminate crossing two state numbered routes,
Yep.
and it ties in with our solar-powered flashing signal
Yep.
very well, and that's, so that's kind of, I portrayed our participation in that as kind of a match to this grant and in a connecting feature. And what other main thing? Also, while we don't have to qualify on supporting housing development, we happen to have the Abbey Road project.
Right.
And to qualify under housing, it's supposed to support a density of 4 units per acre, which we don't have. However, the zoning allows 4 units an acre. It's just that the development is only 3 units an acre because of septic capacity limitations, which I explained in the application as well. So that's the gist of it. I'll respond to questions.
Absolutely, Paul.
On Tuesday, I met with Secretary Davies and with the staff that are administering this program, and they were saying that 9 have applied so far, but 120 were pending applications. That they were going to set aside 10% of the funding for small communities under 7,000. They said that it doesn't have to be tied into economic development, but it would help if it was.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we want to tie in Abbey Road, but we also want to tie in the existing Woodhaven and Leland Farms, because part of the purpose of this sidewalk is to connect existing housing to the downtown and make it work better for those existing projects. And this is now a 3rd project in the same area. So they said that that would help. Also, they'll pick up design costs and construction, unlike for towns over 7,000, they want it designed already. But for under 7,000 population, they'll do both the engineering and the construction and give a grant for that whole part. They emphasize that it's a collaborative process, that they're standing by ready to help communities do good grants, do good grant applications. And so they were more than willing to have applications read to them, shown to them before they're filed.
That I didn't know. It's kind of late now. They're due tomorrow.
But they would try and help make them better. Let's see what else. I mean, there was a lot of they made a lot of points, but I guess the last one I would mention is that they were encouraging, very encouraging, for a community like Sherborn to file this kind of application. How much dollars are we asking for?
$165,000. And I thank Ed Wagner for helping me with the cost estimate. I did do a lot of research on sidewalk projects in other towns and what they cost, and Acton in particular had done a lot of work on that. And between that and Ed's advice, I came up with that figure, of which 12,000 is 12.5. I think I put in there for design costs as roughly 10% of the construction costs.
And the 1,400 linear feet, this goes.
That's from
How
Village
far?
Way, from Village Way to Weiss Kitchen Design, the end of the business district.
Okay, it doesn't include Phase 2, which is.
It doesn't, and the only I did initially, in my initial description, if you read what was in your packet, I did say it went to go to Elliott Street, but I left it out in the final for the main reason being, there's some complications there. It's in front of residential developments that may not necessarily want it. There's a couple of very large trees that either they would have to be removed, or we would need an easement on the private property to go around them. And one of the key factors in evaluating these is readiness to go, so I didn't want to have any hangups that might delay us. I thought we could get that second phase done at a future date. In fact, it's not set in stone that we can't do that. I did not include it in the proposal, but we do have a contingency, and if the costs come in line, we may be able to extend it at that point. But I just didn't want to have to say that we may need it and take an easement from private property, and that would have been a blemish on the application.
You also have another way of getting there. You can go down past the tennis courts and across the fields if you're looking for a safe access route
Correct, right.
there, unless there's snow on the ground and such. And even if it came to that, you could put a cinder path down or something like that along the edge of that field very easily.
Sure.
And make that connection at, less cost, I suppose. Not as nice as having a sidewalk on both sides of Main Street, but still something. This is great, Gino.
How are you dealing with the right-of-way problem? I mean, you've indicated no takings or easements are necessary for this project, as it will be located entirely within the roadway right-of-way. But we have that corner at the Abbey Road development where the wall is and the street is very narrow.
Yes.
How,
Well, I know it hasn't been executed yet, but in part of our land swap with the developer there, that it includes a strip along there that would widen the right-of-way.
yes, but we don't have it yet.
No, we don't, that's right.
We're
But
authorized to
even
get
if we were not to get that, it's very tight, but I believe we could get a 4-foot sidewalk past that wall, right from the edge of pavement to the wall. The telephone pole would have to be moved, but I'm not anticipating that. I'm anticipating that the land swap would go forward as anticipated, but,
So you're comfortable with the statement that says, therefore, no takings or easements are necessary for this project?
yes.
Is this an all-or-nothing type grant?
I'm not certain. I wondered that myself, if they might award a lower amount than the total. I don't know the answer to that.
One reason I'm asking is we've got this sidewalk money that, people have
Right.
expressed a desire to have money spent on sidewalks, and I think this would be a perfect place to spend road money on sidewalks if we needed to, just for the purpose of completing that project. I mean, it's someplace that's going to be used. People are gonna walk there. It's a safety issue. It's an issue for kids and for other people who wanna walk up, as Paul pointed out, to the business district, to the playing fields, any place in that direction. So,
Does this contemplate CM&D doing the construction?
No. Though that would, if we needed to, they could maybe do a portion of it or all of it, and that would certainly, that may be a cost savings, but this anticipates private going out to bid.
Okay.
Great. No, the only other thing I had, my understanding that we had done a strap grant some years ago, and this is sort of a strap grant, or
It
it
is.
is a strap grant.
It's the evolution of that program.
Okay. And we came up short in that one, so I presume you factored into your application thinking whatever you might have learned from the past effort.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think that's great. So you don't need any action from us at this stage of the game?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The application is submitted electronically, but there is a certification letter that needs to be signed and mailed within 2 weeks.
Okay.
But we have it ready, so.
Perfect. All right, so the letter is just something simple, and it's from me.
Good.
So you need to authorize me this application on behalf of the town of Sherborn to agree to implement the MassWorks infrastructure program requirements on behalf of Sherborn. I understand that the information provided with the application will be relied upon by the Commonwealth in deciding whether to make MassWorks infrastructure grant, and that the Commonwealth reserves the right to take action against it, the applicant or any other beneficiary of the grant if any of the information provided is inaccurate, misleading, or false. And it asked me to say, I hereby certify under the pains and penalties of perjury that the answers submitted in this application, the documentation submitted in support are accurate and complete.
I know you're counting on me, depending on
Really?
to verify that. And
All right,
I'm
well,
very
the good thing
comfortable.
is it's you. Anybody else, and I might not do that. But I would welcome authorization to sign this on behalf of.
So moved.
All right, seconded, all in favor? Great.
Good.
Under the pain and penalties of perjury. My goodness. Thanks, Gina.
Did you tell him about the line that he'll indemnify the town? for
Yeah, I've done
someone-
all that, yeah, yeah. And I used to be a CPA, so I always argue against saying the word certify, because I just don't like to use that term, but, oh well.
Okay, thank you
Things I
very
do.
much.
Thanks very much. All right. Speaking of exciting things to learn about and, I guess, sign, we have something else lined up. It's the Forest Stewardship Grant, is that correct?
Yes. Now, it all comes down to, it is a reimbursement share grant, so that we were able to have money now because we have the revolving fund
Yep.
from last town meeting. So our grant is $2,171.52 from the state. We have not, we just started the paperwork to find 3 foresters to go through it and get a plan. They didn't give us much time. It's January 15th, I believe.
Oh, to find the foresters and the plan, yep.
Yeah. January 15th. So we're gonna hustle. We wanna get it done. So
Which parcel is this that this goes to?
it's gonna run from North Main Street. It's gonna head up, across the railroad tracks and keep on going. I forget it's 133 acres, you know, in the line. It's the Shell pipeline.
Yep.
And, you know, we have to get the maps a little straightened out. We actually have a plan that was done in, I think it was 90 or 91, that was not implemented. So we're hoping that the forester can use that to help.
So he'll learn from what was done before, basically, is what
Yeah,
you're
they did the
saying there.
paperwork, and we never did any cutting.
I understand.
So it's
yeah.
going up across the Brush Hill, is that what you're talking about?
It's gonna head in that direction, yeah.
okay.
Not
Paul's
quite
Hill-
that
Paul's Hill
far.
and Brush Hill, okay.
You know, right now, I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly
Oh, that's all right.
how far up, but that's, I know it goes over
I
the
know the area, I
railroad
just
track.
wanted to understand what you were talking
Yeah.
about. Good.
It starts right at the, you know, where the pipeline crosses.
Yep.
On North Main. It starts there and goes all the way. It's a good distance.
Okay.
Because the whole parcel is not too wide.
Right.
So you get a long strip.
But still 130 acres or whatever it was, you said, yeah, wow,
So
great. So are we supposed to sign something? This is for the
In,
forestry
yeah,
guy.
as things go on, when we have to send this to the state, we will be asking for somebody's signature, whether it would be
Yeah, okay.
you gentlemen or David or,
I'd recommend you just vote specifically to authorize me to sign the.
Authorize you to
Should we do
sign.
that now, David?
Yeah,
Yeah.
why don't we do that, yeah. So I'll take a motion to authorize David to sign what's needed for this grant for the forestry stewardship program.
Motion to authorize David to sign what's needed for the grant for the forestry stewardship program.
Second.
Any discussion, all those in favor? Great.
Yes.
Oh,
By state
and I
law,
have-
we have to accept the grant and allow it to be used for the purpose.
So technically have the grant, so we need to accept
Yes.
it, and that's what we're doing
You
here.
gentlemen have to accept it.
All right, so I'll take a motion to accept that grant.
So I move to accept the grant under Chapter 53, Section 40, Chapter 44, Section 53A.
Any
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Great. Well done. So now you want to talk to us about the forest firewood?
Firewood.
Excellent.
My yearly visit to see you gentlemen. We had a very good year last year. I don't know, they brought in $6,240. And after expenses,
Mostly Advil?
pardon?
Mostly Advil? No, just kidding.
No, chains and
Yeah, yeah.
trucking and everything.
Yep.
You know, it was a little, about $4,500, $4,700.
Pretty good.
They're actually ready to start delivering next week. They already have some orders. And they are asking for a $5 increase to the cost. It would be $65 a delivery for seniors and $85 for non-seniors.
Per cord of wood
No,
delivered.
it's about a third of a
A
cord.
third of a cord delivered
And that's delivered,
and stacked.
and they help stack it
They
for
help.
that price.
Wow. That's a service.
And for seniors, it's age 60 years or above.
Right.
Wow,
So even young fellas can take advantage of this program.
That's right.
that's right.
Gets
So-
me my age, yes.
How do you decide how much to harvest each year? You just, whatever the
Most of what we're taking right now is deadwood.
down trees and things like
Down
that?
trees, some that are standing.
Yeah.
There's areas that we're gonna be, possibly thinning,
Yeah.
and close to the roadways and things like that.
What do you do with the stuff you don't sell?
They sell it all. Right now, it's at, they store it behind Bob Ambos's house on the corner of
Yep.
Lake and 16. I think he said he has about 30 loads ready to go,
Wow. And these are cut,
cut and
split?
split. Yeah. They start off with tree length. Sometimes the highway will bring some over, the cutters that go down the street, clearing.
Yep.
They get a load every now and then when it's good wood.
Wow.
A lot of storms last year, there's probably a lot
Yeah,
of good
no,
stuff out
so
there.
you're clearing the forest, then you're
Right.
generating revenue and
And we're gonna start
providing a
with this.
bargain and a service to the residents. Wow, that's great. So you're asking us for a $5 increase, which we would have to move and motion and second and vote on.
Yeah, but move,
Seconded.
yeah, okay.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? You got it, baby.
I thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks to,
That's great.
we've got Ken Adams, Bob Ambos, Doug Brody, Alan Dunn, Scott Embry, Brett Ferry, Peter Gray, John Higley, Mike Hickam, Paul Leach, Kelly McClintock, Bruce Muldoon, Bill Thomas, Tom Trainer, Charlie Williams, and Stuart Williams.
Good group of guys.
It sounds like it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. All right, we are just knocking them down. So now we're back to you, David. And I think we're on to talking about upcoming meeting topics and timing. That sound right?
Right. For the September 19th meeting, we were going to post that as most of the meeting being, we'll do the general business beginning at the meeting and then officially say that we're breaking into a workshop format so
Okay.
that we can go over some of the other things, the topics that keep carrying forward. Town hall organization, appointment update and committee organization, reimbursements, training memberships, associations and professional development, human resources, such as action forms, hiring processes and evaluations, goal setting for FY 14-15 and beyond, and yeah, that's it as far as.
And so the distinction, the nuance of a workshop versus an open meeting is to keep it up at the table for a healthy discussion amongst ourselves
Right,
here.
right.
Okay,
I
it
mean,
still
you-
be televised, still be open to the public.
You can still keep it, yeah, open. Yeah, you can still keep the
But the
TV
topics
rolling.
that you've described are good ones, particularly where we want to be policy deciders, not
Right, there's,
practicers.
yeah, so I wouldn't, some things I may be bringing for you to vote on that night,
Okay,
and we'll try to break those out on the agenda.
okay.
And then other things, as we go through them, might generate something else. And that's why I say it's a workshop, that this is a general topic, but you're going to be, might be
Going off
bringing
in a
in other
variety of
things to
directions and
add
so forth.
into that
Yeah.
discussion.
Okay.
Or telling, discussing, should we have more information on this certain
Right.
topic at a later date or something, so.
David, to the extent you're going to bring us things to vote on, will these be things that you've already circulated to the folks who might be affected by them, or gotten internal comments on, so we're not?
Some, yeah, I went to the personnel board earlier in the week, or maybe it was last week.
I was just thinking about
runs
it,
together.
if we're asked to vote on things and then we've got to then retroactively, have the debate,
Right.
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right, yeah, if it's, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I'm going to need a vote on.
Okay, because it's
But-
only a week
Well, we'll
away.
just have to
If
be
it's-
careful about what we might
Yeah.
vote on to the extent that.
I think
that
it's great, I
issue's
think it's great that
serious.
you're raising all these things, and we
Right.
should get a chance to talk about them. A lot of them are things that have been on your list for a while.
Yeah, and,
I just don't want to jump in with both feet if, somebody's later going to come in and
Right.
say, you didn't hear me on this. or-
well, I think that's why, like, that workshop format, if it's something that is going to require a vote, then we would have it as an agenda item.
At a future meeting,
But
or.
the
or
workshop isn't meant for you to
Take action.
keep voting on things as we flush them out.
Okay,
So, I don't anticipate running into that problem.
good, yeah.
Just a question on the appointment process. Have we completed our annual appointments?
No, there's, I want to bring back a list of recommendations for certain committees to be sunsetted,
See.
some to be reorganized, and then I want to bring back a list of any vacancies that are sitting out there so that we can re-advertise for those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who's been waiting to hear for a long time and hasn't heard that we could take care of? And
As far as a member, like as somebody, an interested party in a committee,
yeah, who's wanted to
No.
re-up and we haven't
No.
got to it.
those have all been addressed.
Okay.
Next round is David tells people they get a cord of wood if they volunteer to fill one of the vacant slots.
Now you're
Like
talking,
that?
I like that. You are always thinking,
Yeah.
that's great.
All stacked for them, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. All right, that's good. Anything else to look forward to? All right.
Can I ask, and I had, from a scheduling standpoint, circulated a suggestion that we try to combine our meeting with advisory with one of our standard meetings. And I wonder if that's going to be something that people will support. That way it's a,
I support it.
I support it if we can work out the logistics. I don't know.
Diane
'cause
spoke with,
There's 9 of them, and
okay.
Diane's working.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. And I mean, I think we could even be flexible about what day of the week we met on that week. If
Yeah,
it,
as
if
long
it
as
helped,
it's
as long as it
not-
wasn't a day somebody else had a conflict, but
I think it makes sense,
Yeah.
You also mentioned you wanted a week off. I think
I need a
October.
week off, no. No, I just was questioning
October 10th.
whether if we keep on this week schedule, there might be a week that I am not around on a Thursday,
Right.
but,
Right.
we can deal with that when it's coming up.
Okay.
I'll know
Okay.
better then. But we can switch days or whatever.
Yeah,
makes
I was
sense.
gonna say, I'm pretty flexible about changing to another day in the week,
Okay.
other than Wednesdays,
Right, sure.
but happy to accommodate you.
Okay, thanks.
Terrific.
It's coming up.
Perfect. It might be nice, not necessarily on the 19th, but just to get our safety guys in to talk storm planning, not too late in the season, particularly if, I don't know, Isabel or whatever else is next up in the alphabet decides to rear its ugly head. That's all. We
Yeah.
may not need to do it in this crowd, may just be
No, I have,
us offline, but you should get our guys to get with you,
I have a,
chiefs and so forth.
I have a date set for, I don't know who's doing it. They're coming to town hall to video me, the new fire chief, and Ed in a Q&A about prep for the winter
Oh,
to play back on the cable. But we can bring them in and do that.
I'm gonna make
As well.
popcorn when that plays, David.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for climate change with palm trees all winter.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. Tell me about it. Okay, good. Well, I think that takes care of the open meeting agenda items. So I am going to now move that we go to an executive session. I'll read the motion, and we will not be coming back into open session unless anybody else. Chief, did you have anything you wanted to, did I see you do one of these back there? No. I thought I did.
He's doing the wave because.
He's just waiting, he wants to get
been in there
going.
for so
Okay.
long.
All right. I move that the Board of Selectmen enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining and litigation where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's collective bargaining and litigating position. And the chair so declares pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, and with respect to pending collective bargaining in the following pending cases: Cannon et al. versus the Town of Sherborn Zoning Board of Appeals et al., and Cannon et al. Versus the Town of Sherborn Planning Board et al., and to not return to open session. I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
The second is the motion is seconded by Mr. Jimo. Having a second, we will now have a roll call vote. Mr. Durensis?
Aye.
Mr. Jimo?
Aye.
And I, Mr. Caruso, vote aye. Having passed a vote of 3-0, the open session is now closed. Good night, and we are now in executive session. I have to do that. Wow.